Hey everybody, Jeff, your executive gardener. It's been a while. As I explained in my other video, I'm back in Houston for some time with the coronavirus. Hope everybody out there is staying safe and taking the appropriate measures to get us all as a country and a world out of this crazy time. So I'm going to give you two videos in the next few days. This one, I just want to show you real quick it's about volunteer plants. So volunteer plants can be in the terms of weeds or other things that birds pick up and distribute. They could also be in your compost, which is my situation. So I've done quite a bit of worm composting the past 4 years, and with my pending move here in the summer, likely to Pittsburgh, I have all these composting worms that I didn't want to kill. And plus I'm away for 2 weeks at a time, so I didn't want them to dry out in the summer. So I made the decision to put the composting worms back in the planting bed. So one of the things you'll find out with composting is that sometimes the tomato seeds don't break down all the way by the composting worms. And in this situation, it's created for me volunteer plants in the beds that I put the worm composting. And it's kind of cool. So I've been away, I came back, and all of a sudden I have tomatoes. I never did any shopping for seedlings or planted seeds or gone through the tough work of starting seeds indoors. Nature kind of just took care of itself, which is kind of amazing. So I'm going to show you one of my beds, at least, that has these volunteer tomatoes. I'm just going to let them grow naturally like a bush or like they would in the wild because they are volunteers. And as you'll see, they're a mix of different tomato plants based on the different tomatoes that I put in the composting bin for the worms to go through. And then I'm going to replant a few of them. I decided this year, other than I got 2 tomato plants growing in 5-gallon bins, other than that, I'm going to take these volunteer tomato bushes, and start them in my regular garden. Really low maintenance. They seem to be pretty hardy because they've kind of started on their own, and see what happens. So let me take you outside, show you what the raised bed looks like with the volunteers, and I'll replant a few of them. So one of the problems, as I said earlier, when you have compost, is that you compost your tomatoes. And when the tomatoes get composted, now this was worm compost. Actually, as most of you know, I'm in the process of moving. So I put all of my composting worms into this bed, and that bed, and that bed. So they're back into the soil. And one of the problems with composting with worms is that the tomato seeds are in the compost. They don't get broken down all the way, and then they reappear when the compost is planted in the planter beds, and this is the case here. So this year it hasn't worked out to be such a bad thing, because with the coronavirus and everybody being pretty much shut in for the past 2 weeks, this has given me an opportunity to get tomatoes without going out and buying tomatoes. Now the stores are open, but one of the cool things about these volunteer tomatoes, as I may have mentioned earlier, is that you don't know what you get. So there's a bit of a mix it up here, and you'll see here as I get closer, they've just kind of grown sideways out of the seed, and you'll see here there's many different looking leaves. So those almost look a little bit like a potato leaf. That's obviously more of a husky tomato or a cherry tomato. And then we do have tomatoes in here. So if you look, you'll see various tomatoes here, certainly not ripe yet, but they're starting to sprout. And then, there again, you've got more of a husky tomato. You got a few potato leaf tomatoes and a few non-tomato leaf tomatoes. So kind of cool. So what I'm going to show you in a second is what I'm going to do. I actually dug up a few of these seedlings, and I'm going to put them in my caged garden instead of going to garden centers, because the garden centers are closed here. Lowe's and Home Depot are not. I don't have to basically plant, and I should have plenty of tomatoes when it's all said and done here. So let me show you the side garden. So I dug up these 2 tomato seedlings. Both of them are volunteer seedlings, this one and this one. So you can see it's kind of weird, like what it did here. I didn't pay attention. I've been on the road, and these things just kind of took off on their own. I should say I've been in Pittsburgh, not in Houston. So it's kind of straggly, but as you know, with these tomato vines, I can bury them pretty deep and they'll kind of reroot themselves. So I'm going to plant this here, but otherwise the plant looks really healthy. What I've done here is I've supercharged my soil, that part's gone. I got to weed that. But I've made a little bit part of the garden because I'm not going to be here much. I'm traveling a lot between Pittsburgh and Houston. Hopefully airlines will open up in 4 weeks or so. Well, they're open, but it'll be safer to travel, I should say. But so I don't want to be a huge burden for my kids and my wife to take care of. So I'm just going to replant these for which the seeds were left in the compost and see what happens. I don't know what I'm going to get. I'm sure it's some type of a hybrid variety, but probably it'll taste good. And I'll document what it tastes like. Could taste horrible as well. But this is kind of a cool present I didn't have to pay for. And again, if any of you do composting, you know that tomato seeds don't digest with worms, and they usually end up there and you have volunteers. So we'll see what happens, and I'll come back in a few weeks and show you, but I just thought this was kind of cool, and I would share it with you. I hope everybody's staying safe during COVID-19. We're all quarantined, a little bit stir crazy. If you get a chance to garden in your backyard, it's a great way to de-stress, take your mind off the other things. Until next time, Jeff, your executive gardener. Bye.